But first, like, subscribe, comment, click the bell for notifications, consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive perks, it's really cheap, and subscribe to the Words Like That Arts and Media Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Alright, now shut up and get to it.
Can't have no words like that.
All right, folks, super excited about today's video. I'm going to be taking a look at my favorite album of all time. This is Cosmo's Factory by Creedence Clearwater Revival, who is my favorite band of all time, and I would say my favorite artist, along with John Fogerty as a solo artist. And for the last few years, I've been doing these reaction re-listens to all of CCR's albums for their 55th anniversary. And last year I had so much going on, I missed the two 1970 albums, Cosmo's Factory and Pendulum. I'm going to try to rectify that today. I'm probably going to do a reaction, review, re-listen to both those in one session and split them up, put them on Patreon, and then have a YouTube edit. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're only going to get to hear snippets of the song. If you want to see the full reactions, you can go support on Patreon for these reactions. But this record here, this is the record that is widely considered to be CCR's best. It was certainly their biggest selling album of the time. It was their fifth studio release following 1969, which was an incredible run of 3 incredible albums that were all big hits. And on the strength of this album and the 6 Billboard Hot 100 hit singles that it spawned, that's right, 6 singles, the band became the #1 band in the world, outselling the Beatles and the Stones in 1970. It's just an incredible record, and I'm going to take a listen to it for the first time in many, many years all the way through. I'll be stopping between songs and commenting during, just like a regular reaction. Before we get into it, if you are watching this on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, click the bell for notifications. Also, consider supporting us on Patreon, although I'm not going to be posting a lot of stuff on Patreon moving forward. I got some personal stuff coming up. There will still be a way to support the channel, and whenever I do produce content, you'll be able to access it first on there. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Up first, this is Ramble Tamble. This is a little-known album cut, but I think it is one of their best album cuts. It is a 7-minute track. Obviously, did not get a lot of airplay. It was not released as a single, because unless you're the Beatles, you couldn't really get away with a 7-minute single in this time frame. But it is a fantastic track, and we're going to get into this. Hey, let's do it. Yeah, it's an incredible track, and there's so much of it that is very much CCR that we've heard before, but there's a lot of it that's something new and different, experimental for them, which is what Fogerty was trying to do. He's really trying to expand their sound on this record. He'd really been doing that for the last few records. I talked about this whenever I did those re-listens of the last couple of years, of starting with their first record, their self-titled debut, then Bayou Country, then Green River, then Willie and the Poor Boys, and each one is like a piece in progression as Fogerty is really honing their sound down. And the swamp rock, I would say, was really their patented sound. On this one, they're kind of trying to get away from that. At least Fogerty is, because he was the driving creative force here. He was writing, producing, singing, playing electric guitar, arranging the whole shebang. And this song, it's basically a sequel to Commotion, which was a B-side to their Green River single and was a track on the Green River album. And Commotion, it's in the same key, it's in the key of D. Both this and Ramble Tamble are in the key of D. And they're both like updated rockabilly, but also they both have a more then modern, late 60s, early 70s rock sound to their intro, and then some of the production choices. And they're both also kind of a social, political, societal commentary of their times. With Commotion, it was about everybody being in a hurry and nobody being able to rest in American society, and it's just always run, 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 rush, 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 rush. And then this is kind of in the same way, but takes it to the next step of talking about how chaotic everything is with the economic. There's some social commentary in here, economic commentary in here, just some political commentary, but not much. Just a couple of lines here where you get what he's talking about. He says actors in the White House, which is obviously a dig at the Nixon administration at the time. and every song ends with mortgage on my something. Like mortgage on my home, I think is the first verse, then the mortgage on my car is verse 2, mortgage on my life is verse 3. And it's just talking about all this chaos and all the bad things that are going on with the society and economics, politics, but it's not really necessarily in your face. It's not very heavy-handed, and the verses are very quick, and it really works as commentary. And most of Fogerty's political commentary and social commentary, societal commentary in this period are like that, and that's why they survive the test of time. You can listen to them today, and you don't have to scratch your head and think, what is he talking about? No, you get it because society still has some of these same problems, particularly with commotion, with hurrying and rushing, and just with general chaos and things, not being like they should be. So it really stands up. Musically, though, what really elevates this track is that middle instrumental section that has so many layers to it. It just completely changes up from that rockabilly sound of the beginning of the song into this more progressive building. Again, I use the word anthemic, epic sound. It's a wall of sound, and it's getting faster and faster. It's building in tempo. It's building in volume. It's building instrumentation, and there's production choices that he makes there, mixing techniques where he's constantly panning that lead electric guitar from right to left, and at some points it's at the center. All of that really elevates this track from a lot of CCR album cuts, even CCR singles, separates them from the singles as good as they are and as timeless as they are. And this also really elevates this above similar tracks from artists of the time period. I think this is one of their best tracks, maybe their best album cut, at least in the top 2 of their album cuts. Really great stuff, and a great way to kick off the record, because I'm of the mindset that the first track on a record should really kind of slap you in the face in some way, and this one does. It slaps you in the face, first of all, musically with the tempo, and then later with that building anthem, instrumental break jam. But also, lyrically, the lyrics are kind of biting, and it's talking about all the negative things that Fogerty was observing in the culture at the time. Great, great opener. All right, up next, this is one of 4 covers, the first of 4 covers on the record. This is Before You Accuse Me. And CCR does some great covers. They were known for doing some really good covers going into this record. Their first big hit was their cover of Susie Q, which is just incredible. I Put a Spell on You, Midnight Special, Even Nighttime is the Right Time. These were covers they had done on previous releases that they really put their own stamp on. I say they, of course, Fogerty was the driving creative force behind that. Great, great covers. The covers on this record, as good as the record is, and as well as they play them, they're not really that special. There's not a lot of changes to the original versions to make these CCR's own. And I'm not sure why Fogerty decided to do that. There's really only one cover on here, Heard It Through the Grapevine, which will be later in the record. That's the only cover that they did that really warranted, they really did something to it that made the choice to cover it justifiable. Put it that way. This one is not like that. This one's pretty much by the numbers, safe cover. It would have been fine at live shows. I'm sure they used to perform this at live shows because that's how they developed their sound. They would perform these, kind of old school blues covers. So let's get into it. This is Before You Accuse Me.
Say I've been buying other women clothes, but you've been talking to someone else.
Good. It was good. Really good. I mean, they played it great. Again, though, it was a really safe cover. They basically just took the original version, and it's just John, his vocals, his guitar, a very signature sound to both of those things. And that's the only difference, and that's fine, but this is not one that I have in my regular listening of CCR. Up next, Travelin Band. So this is one of their hit singles. This was, I think, a double A-side with Who'll Stop the Rain. I think Who'll Stop the Rain actually has survived the test of time longer than Travelin Band did, but this is a great rockin' track. It is a classic rock and roll homage. Its sound, its chord progression, its structures, everything is like classic 50s rock and roll. In fact, that's exactly what the writers of Good Golly Miss Molly thought whenever they sued them for this song and won. I think that's a travesty. I say won. They may have settled out of court and agreed to put them as songwriter or something on the track. Can't remember how that went. But I think that was a travesty because there's nothing in this song that seems like it was ripped from Good Golly Miss Molly any more than any other rock and roll song from the 50s or any rock and roll song that had been made since then that was, again, paying homage to that period that sounded like that. I mean, there's no difference between Travelin Band and all those other 50s rock and roll songs. So I just think that was ridiculous. But this is a great track, and lyrically, John's talking about his experience on the road, the band's experience on the road, playing as a traveling band. Let's do it. And this is a fast one. I think it's like 2 minutes long. Yeah, 2:09, hard hitting, in your face track. Let's do it. Nice horns here too. Brass.
737 coming out of the sky. Oh, won't you take me down to Memphis on a midnight ride? I won't move.
John just comes out belting, screaming that.
Yeah. Well, I'm flying across the land, trying to get a hand, playing in a traveling band. Listen to the radio.
Again, it's classic rock and roll from the 50s. I mean, just straight up, except you now have 60s production abilities. You now have the 60s guitar sound. You had a lot of distortion on there, which is not something you really had in the guitars of the 1950s. And it's John just screaming, belting, his guitar is screaming. But he adds some things in this one that maybe he wouldn't have on previous records. He adds some piano, Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard style piano in there. He adds some horn sections that he's playing himself, some brass in there, and that really elevates it above just a 4-piece rock and roll band song. But even without those, it's still a great track, and it still is the perfect throwback to that era. And paying respect to those artists that inspired Fogerty and that came before him. And it's just a great song. And again, it's one of those ones that's up-tempo and it's in your face. And this also would have been a really good album opener to just smack your audience in the face, splash them with cold water, because it is so up-tempo and the guitars are screaming and Fogerty's screaming, and it's just a really rollicking good track from CCR. And it's no wonder that it was a hit, and actually proved that rock and roll at the time was not dead. Like the classic rock and roll that had evolved into the rock of the late 60s and early 70s, it still had a place in rock canon, just as these 3-chord, up-tempo, fast-paced 2-minute pieces. Just an excellent, excellent track. All right, up next is Ooby Dooby. This is another one of the covers from the record. This is a cover of Roy Orbison's first hit. Now, when Roy Orbison first came out, he was writing in the standard rock and roll rockabilly range. And this was his first hit, and it's that standard thing. It's standard rock and roll, standard rockabilly. And the song it's okay. It's not a great song. It worked fine for its period. And again, Fogerty, for some reason, with most of the covers on this record, just played them straight. So the only difference really between this version and Roy's version is the guitar's got some more distortion on it because it's now 1970, and it's Fogerty singing lead instead of Roy Orbison. And Roy Orbison, he is my second favorite artist of all time, and I might go so far to say that he is my favorite vocalist even over Fogerty, although not my overall favorite artist. I love Roy Orbison. And it's nice to hear my other favorite singer just doing a straight cover of Roy's material, but creatively, artistically, there's nothing wrong with the song, but it's just there's nothing there to elevate it, and CCR really did not do anything to make it unique and their own. Still, it's a good track. Let's take a listen. That's it. Again, it's straight up the original version, but instead of Rorbison singing it, it's Fogarty, and there's more Source on the guitar. That's about all you can say. They did a great job, but nothing really special about that track. Up next, now this, totally different animal. This is Looking Out My Back Door. This is another one of their hits. It's a classic rock standard at this point. It's very, so far, the first 4 tracks have been in the rock and roll, rockabilly, blues, rock range. This one is an acoustic country folk rock track with very whimsical lyrics that a lot of people mistakenly think are about like an LSD trip, because a lot of songs that had these very strange lyrics from the time period were based on those types of experience. But CCR, and particularly Fogarty, were actually anti-drug, and the lyrics to this song are actually a nursery rhyme in the vein of Dr. Seuss that Fogarty wrote for his son. He wanted to be able to have a song that was very Dr. Seussian that he could sing to his son, who was very small at the time. So here we go. This is Looking Out My Back Door. Let's do it.
Just got home from Illinois, locked the front door, oh boy. Got to sit down, take a rest.
Love it. Love it. It's such a happy song. It just makes you feel good when you listen to it. And again, this musically, it's just a complete departure from anything we've heard on the record so far. It's kind of folky. It's country, folk, rock. I guess you can kind of hear some of the same rockabilly sensibilities, because that's what rockabilly is, a hybrid of the country, western, and rock and roll. So I guess you do kind of still have that vibe going on in there, particularly in the rhythm. But instead of this electric heavy thing that we've been listening to, everything is just electric guitar and a lot of heavy distortion on the guitars, and some of them are screaming and screeching, and even Fogarty vocally screaming and screeching on some of the previous tracks. And this one, he does get kind of high, that in that do, like he's an octave higher than that. I can't even hit it without my voice cracking, because Fogarty is a tenor singer. I'm not. A high tenor singer, and I'm not. But overall, though, his vocals are much smoother, or they're kind of lower throughout much of the verses. And lyrically, again, yeah, you think it's about drugs, but actually, no, when you look at it, that it's a Dr. Seussian type fairy tale, and he's pulling all of these different creatures and these motifs in to make that type of story, to make a fantasy story for kids, for his son specifically at the time. Really, really enjoyable track, and you can see all this as he's singing it. And also, there's a line, he says, tambourines and elephants. Well, when he sings it live now, the second time he sings that, he says tangerines and Elvis, just to kind of mix things up, make it fun, and I like that line. Yeah, great track. All right, up next, this was another one of their hit singles off this record. This is Run Through the Jungle, and there's some, obviously the title evokes Vietnam, that was still going on at the time, and Fogarty sang a lot about what was going on in the culture at the time. He was actually in the military, and he didn't serve in Vietnam, but he was in the military during that period. And Run Through the Jungle has that idea, and it kind of gets that swamp vibe, but he's actually talking about violence in general with firearms, from what my understanding of this is, the song is. And it's a very, very dark track. I never realized it, because there's such a hard edge rock sound to the opening guitar. I never realized that it was really still in their swamp rock wheelhouse, because it just sounded so dark and harsh. But as I got older and I really learned their catalog, I realized, no, this is actually the next step in their swamp rock evolution. Is just the darkest, both lyrically and musically, that they did in that subgenre. And very, very heavy stuff here. So let's get into it. Run Through the Jungle.
Oh, don't look back, you see.
again, it sounds like they got backwards tape on that guitar there and doing it in reverse, which just makes it sound, always makes it sound weird. They did some of that effect on a couple of tracks from their first record, and it just gives it this really creepy vibe. And the whole song, again, very dark. He talks about the devil being on the loose, and it just plays right into that swamp, black magic, voodoo mystique that Fogerty loves to play in, both lyrically and musically. But again, as Fogerty has said, the lyrics on this song in particular are actually referring to real-world incidents of violence, as opposed to some of his other tracks that really are just there to be kind of creepy, spooky, Halloween songs, or give that scary vibe. But great track. That was another hit for them. Up next, yet another hit. This is the 4th hit on the record that we've listened to. And actually, there's technically, I guess there's actually 7 hits on there, because there was a single version of Hurt the Grapevine that was released later that I believe did well on the Billboard 100. So I guess there's actually 7 hit singles on here. This one is Up Around the Bend. This is the quintessential driving song. It's happy, it's upbeat, even though it opens up. It's got this iconic screaming electric guitar opening riff that's created with an amp turned up to 10. Yet it's very easy listening. It's happy, it's bright, and you immediately get the picture of driving on the open road on a spring afternoon or a summer afternoon. And that's what the lyrics actually are. It's literally about being out there on the road, going up around the bend of the road. And quick little funny note here, I've actually read an old review of this song well, I don't know if it was actually reviewing the song or it was just using it as an example, talking about the problem with music of the period of the late 1960s, 1970s. There was a review written at the time that this song was new, talking about how the music was subversive and rebellious, and they used this track as an example, saying Creedence Clearwater Revival, their song Up Around the Bend, is calling for a revolution. It says, "Come on, arise and win," and the actual lyrics are, "Come on the rising wind. We're going up around the bend." But anyway, that's just a little funny note there. It's a great track. Let's do it. Up Around the Bend.
Come on, the rising wind. We're going up around the bend. Yeah.
Nice fade out. I'm not a huge fan of the fade out. It works on this song. Yeah, great track, classic track. Again, this is it's just a feel-good track, and the lyrics are talking about being on the road, and it paints that picture and just makes you want to be out there on the road in the spring, in the summer, in a convertible, top down, wind blowing through your hair, just cares to the wind, rolling down the road. Perfect driving song. Actually, I believe they used a new version of this with Fogerty and I think some country artists who I can't remember, for I think NASCAR this last year, because it's just that type of song. It's perfect for that. All right, up next, this is My Baby Left Me. This is another cover, and it's pretty much by the numbers. Don't really do anything to elevate it, to make it their own, just like the first 2 covers on the record. But we're going to take a listen to it here. Let's do it.
I hate to lose that woman, hate to say goodbye. You know she left me. My baby left me. My baby.
Okay, you got Fogerty singing this Arthur Crudup song that Elvis covered. Okay, it's good. That's about it. This is one that I don't really. It's not part of my regular listens for CCR. The next one, however, that's not the case. This is Who'll Stop the Rain. This is another one that was a huge hit and also stood the test of time. And this one is different from any other track on the record. Most of these we talked about are in the rock, blues, rock and roll, rockabilly range. This one isn't. This one is very much, musically, is very much specific to its time, 1970. It could have come out a little bit earlier, a little bit later, but not much. Musically, this particular style of pop meets rock and roll ballad just didn't really survive. But lyrically, it stood the test of time. I think that's one of the reasons why it's continued to be a standard all these years later, staple of rock radio, classic rock radio. Let's do it. Who'll Stop the Rain?
And I wonder, still I wonder, who'll stop the rain?
Fogerty's told this many times over the years. The Grateful Dead went on before them, and the concert just kept getting pushed way out farther and farther. So CCR is going on way later than what they were supposed to. And the Grateful Dead comes out, and as John says, they put everybody to sleep. And then Creedence finally takes the stage, and they get out there, and it's raining, and Woodstock, of course, a lot of stuff went on there, and you got mass of bodies like out there just piled on top of each other, asleep, passed out in the mud, and their CCR gets up there to try to do their show, and John said there was one guy way the back of the field that holds the lighter up and says, "We're with you, John." And John says he played the rest of that show for that one guy. And Fogerty really hated that set, didn't allow it to appear in the Woodstock documentary. Finally let it be released back in 2019, I think it was. And that's what this song was. That was the inspiration for this song. That's what that last verse was about, and what the line "Who'll Stop the Rain" referred to. All right, this is I Heard It Through the Grapevine. Now, this is a cover that CCR actually makes their own, and I would rather listen to this version than I had any other version of the song other than Marvin Gaye's. I'd rather listen to this than I had Marvin Gaye's, Gladys Knight and the Pips. To me, this is the quintessential version, which I am, though, a rock guy. If you're more of a Motown R&B person, then probably wouldn't like this one better. I do. I think this is just the definitive version of the track. This is right up there with their Susie Q cover, I Put a Spell on You cover, Midnight Special cover, as having taken this classic song and put their own stamp, their own spin on it, and made it something unique and different. And this is the full album cut versus 11-minute cut. It was later, I think it was 1976, 4 years after they broke up. It was edited down to a 4-minute single version and gained some popularity there. That's the version I knew growing up. It played on Oldies Radio. I also was given a CCR CD that had that cut on there. But the 11-minute cut has a lot of big blues rock jam sessions in there that I absolutely love. So if that is your thing, you're going to love this track if you haven't heard it already. Here we go. This is CCR's version of I Heard It Through the Grapevine.
Played it through the grapevine. Not much longer would you be mine. Ooh.
That's it. Wow. Great jam. If you like that kind of thing, that ought to be right up your alley. It's just a great extended blues rock cut of a classic song. Again, this is right up there with CCR's best covers. Definitely the best cover on this record. Instead of playing it by the numbers like they did for the first three, Fogerty really came in, arranged this thing to make it something special, to make it CCR's own version. Great track. And now, the album closer. This is my favorite song of all time, is Long As I Can See the Light. And it's bluesy, but not in the up-tempo, in-your-face blues rock that we heard on the first half of the record. This is very mournful, introspective, and it's about somebody who has to be moving on because they're compelled to in some way. The lyrics indicate that it's kind of a wanderlust, but it can also be interpreted as they're compelled because they have to go to work, or maybe they have to go fight in a war, or maybe some other thing is calling them away from home, and they got to go, but they're asking their loved ones at home to keep a light on for them, because they'll be back, and they can, when they can see that light, they can find their way home. And I think it's just an incredible song. And Fogerty plays, instead of his signature electric guitar as the lead instrument in this, he plays a saxophone that is just absolutely gorgeous. This song gets me every time. It is a great track. And without further ado, let's do it. As long as I can see the light.
Put a candle in the window.
Yeah, again, it's my favorite song. Great closer to the record, musically and lyrically. Just really brings it home, literally, because that's what this song is about. It's about coming home. And again, I think maybe for Fogerty, what was in his mind at the time, I don't know if I've ever heard him discuss this, but being on the road and a traveling band coming back home, but also this could be applied to somebody who has been compelled to leave for some reason, whether it's because of their own restlessness or because they have responsibilities that they have to go take care of, like going to work or going to, if they're in the military, going to fight. I think this would be, a matter of fact, I actually, if I remember correctly, I thought about doing this. I think I did it, that we actually played this live for a show we did somewhere around Memorial Day, 4th of July. We dedicate this to military personnel, the Veterans Day, something like that. Dedicate this to military personnel because that kind of gets in my mind that you've had to be away, been deployed in the military, and it just kind of gets you. And also, it makes me think of a final homecoming and the light being the light of heaven. And whenever you're through your work on earth and you die and you go to your eternal home, that my mind goes there too. I just love the song. It's so easy. It really just hits you in the gut, and all the instrumentation, Fogerty's voices. There's this mournfulness, there's this sadness, but it's ultimately a hopeful song. And I love the blues ballad feel to it, and the saxophone, and all the production choices from the keyboard to the cymbals at the end. Everything was just perfect on this. The writing, the arrangement, the execution, just absolutely excellent. And that's the end of Cosmo's Factory. And that was also one of the 6 singles, 7 if you count Heard Through the Grapevine, that was released 4 years later as a single cut from this record. And it's easy to see why this album is considered one of their best, why it was their highest selling, and why it helped them outsell the Beatles and the Stones when it was released in 1970. And again, it's my favorite record for my favorite band, contains my favorite song. I absolutely love this record. The only criticisms that I have are 3 of the 4 covers. It's an 11-track album, which is actually a little long for a CCR record. If they had cut the 3 safe covers, it would have been a stronger record, I feel like. Even though I do like those 3 covers. They're fun. I'll listen to them every now and then. Not usually, though. Matter of fact, I haven't listened to them in years, whereas that's not the case with some of these other tracks. But it's a minor criticism. It's a great album from, I think, is the greatest American rock band ever. I don't think there's anybody else. And I remember saying this about Fogerty and Bob Dylan, and I ended up getting proven wrong with Bruce Springsteen, that you couldn't really say anybody else was a better American singer-songwriter, a greater American singer-songwriter, because there's a difference between best and greatest. I think I know my American bands well enough to say definitively Creedence Clearwater Revival is the greatest American band, at least rock and roll band, that has existed up to this point. And unless somebody can point me to somebody else that I haven't thought of, or maybe I didn't know, I think I know everybody, though, well enough. I'm going to stand by.
Hope you enjoyed that clip. If you did, consider supporting us on Patreon. Subscribe to YouTube if you hadn't already. And we'll see you soon.